Okay, so for today, we're going to look at external library, which is one of the best features uh, in Flutter in modern application development, where we can import external codes or external library or dependencies into our project and accelerate our development. Okay, so this is if you are in in software engineering. There's one subject in software engineering that basically you learn about creating your own or developing your own package, and that package and some also make business out of it. They create a package and they provide this package for developer, and for those who wish to use their package, they need to pay some amount of fee to be able to unlock its features. So this is also another business or technical business that available in software development, component-based programming, right? So in component-based programming, basically what you've learned is to create a component, which any application, like for example for Flutter, can use that package. They can download the package into their project, and then they can use the package as part of the project. But the the package on its own cannot be run. So developer will require to import the package into their project and then follow the installation and also the usage instructions, how to integrate that into their project. Okay, so that what you should learn in component-based programming, but I have no telling is that what you're going to learn over there. But the idea for component-based programming is this. Okay, being able to develop your own component, and that component can be imported into any other application. And sometimes most of the application that, for example, like if you implemented through DLL, the dynamic link library, so that library can be imported into any desktop application. Okay, so that is something to look further. But for this example, we have a Play Audio library or the audio player library. I've updated a few here because the one that I use here is quite old. The version that I use here is quite old. Even though you can still use the older version of the library itself, but sometimes you might need to update the library um, with the new version so that you can have the latest features. But when you use the latest version, things might break because developers sometimes when they update their library, certain functionality that are available before this, certain methods that are available, certain variables that is there no longer there. They remove that library, they remove that methods, they remove the function and whatnot. So you need to check which version basically that, if you're familiar with the older version and that older version, um, you just use a very simple function there, so it should be no problem. But if you want to use the latest version, you need to check their documentation. Okay, you need to be able to read their documentation and then later on implement in your application. All right, so for example, this application, so I'm still with the Hello World application. So I just added here and there. So let me run the application first and show you how to integrate that into your project. Okay, so this is a library for audio players. So most of the library, free library or even paid library also available through the PubDev. So if you go to this PubDev link down here, okay, so this PubDev link, able to just click on this, left control click. All right. So this should allow you to access the library documentation, and within the library, you should be able to get all the required information. So the way that you read the PubDev is that this is the name of the library, and this is the current version of the library. So the one that I use in the documentation, and later on I'm going to update that. So I already updated the library, my books, but I'm going to publish that later, so you can download the latest version. So this one is quite new. So you can see that they updated 25 days ago, which means that it's very new. Means still active. Sometimes certain projects, certain library people, they just abandon the project because the project no longer interests people. And you can see the popularity here still 100%. People still use this. A lot of people like the project, and there's even the popularity here is 100%. So it means that the library is stable, the library is workable for many people, so they are happy with it. And here up here, this is for Flutter, SDK Flutter. So the platform that you can compile, which means that the library can be used for Android application, iOS, Linux, Mac, web, Windows, pretty much everything. So which means that if you use the library, you can run or you can use the library for all these platforms. So you don't have to worry about if you want to compile for Linux, you want to compile for iOS, will it works? And it definitely works. And you have to be very careful in terms of the platform. If it only supported Android, which means that you can only run for Android, not for iOS. Okay, so always look at the platform being supported by the library. So down here, this is all the README. So the README basically is very important piece of document for those who like to implement this plugin, this library, because this will tells you what are the requirements, and each library, each dependencies, they are different. The requirement basically different to each other. So you might need to spend your time reading the library. Okay, you need to read here. All right, so sometimes they are also making money. You can buy me a coffee, means that you give donation to them. So this is basically what programmer do, what developer do. So sometimes you have free time, so you have an idea and then you want to contribute to the community. But at the same time, of course, if you like the project, like for me, myself, sometimes if I really like the project, buy him a coffee, him or her a coffee. So which means that you're giving it like $5, $3. So that one is basically just to motivate them to create better or update the library. It's not compulsory, you don't have to, but it is out of a community respect. Okay, you as a community, in a software development community, as a programming development, so you should feel the needs to help each other. Okay, you don't be what we call as not a nice word, but yeah, don't be that. And help each other in terms of making whatever technology that is being pushed become better. Okay, so this is truly open source. This is highly different than closed source system, because in a totally closed source system, only the company can access the source code. But this is an open source system. This is community system. Everybody can get access to the codes, and sometimes the code is very big. The project is quite big, and it is not just the work of one person. And they spend their time, they spend their knowledge, they spend their technical skills into this. Okay, one of the technology that available nowadays without the community contribution is a 3D printer. 3D printer came out from open source group, open source community, open source hardware. So because of that community, now we have a 3D printer accessible to everyone. Okay, everybody can use a 3D printer because of them. Okay, and the people who work with the firmware, who work with the codes, they literally hundreds and hundreds of people all around the world, and they work for free. They contribute their knowledge, they contribute their skills, and then share to each other. So being part of the community, you should support the community. Okay? It is not a must, but out of your own conscious. So that's why don't crack software, don't use any software that is illegal software. Always use the valid software, so appreciate your fellow developer, right? Okay, who else is going to respect them? You. Okay, people out there, they have no idea how hard it is to build software. They just use, and they even sometimes complain, but they have no idea how it is at the back, right? The most important documentation or instructions, one is installation. So for installations, actually it's very simple, it's rather simple because everything handled automatically through Flutter tools, tooling. So here you can use instructions such as Flutter pub add Audioplayers, which is you can give the command down here through your terminal tab. Okay, so this is your terminal tab. You can just give the command within your application directory. So you can just Flutter pub, and then whatever library that you are interested in. So there are a number of methods available. So once you have these library names shown here, it will automatically add dependencies into your pub/spec file. So remember the pub/spec file. So this is a very one file here which is available in the root directory called pub/spec YAML. Okay, this is pub/spec YAML, which basically contain your project properties such as project name, project description, the current environment version of this SDK that is being supported, version of the project. So this is where you can change the version or the build number of the project. And here, so this is where the dependencies comes in. There are two dependencies, either dev dependencies or just dependencies. Dependencies usually being used for final product, but usually we just put it inside dependencies. You can also put into dev dependencies, basically the same, but for dev dependencies, it basically enable what we call as or use the Flutter lint for debugging, better debugging. But actually, there's no need for that. Okay, just put everything inside here. Or you can add the library names on your own if you want to use specific version. So the older version that I use in my book, that one is version 0, I believe it's 0.3. That one is quite old. Okay, but the latest version is much easier to use. I've tested yesterday. And this version 1.1.1, which is a very stable version. So the way that you read versioning is that when it reaches version 1, means that version is already stable. It's already released and stable. But if the version is still 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, they haven't yet reached version 1. So when it came to version 1, less than version 1, they are still under heavy development. They're still building that. The community is still building that library. There's still much engagement within the library community. But once it reaches version 1, means that they have entered what we call a stable version. Okay, unless there's a version 2. Okay, so version 2 means that there's a major upgrade to a version 2. So version 1, they have released a stable version. So 1.1.1. So this is basically the stable version for the library, and you can just use that. But you can still use the older version by giving a name or look at the which version that actually you are looking for. Like, for example, there are a number of versions here. So the older version that I use, I believe 0. I think 0.2. Is it the book that I use? Oh, 0, 0, yeah, down here. 0.3. The one that I use is 0.3. It's quite old already. 4 years ago. Okay, so the latest version just released. Anything beyond 0.18, they implemented null safety. because of the requirement from Flutter to implement null safety. And you have now the latest version updated 25 days ago. Even version 1.10 updated just a mere 37 days ago. So it's very new. Okay, so which is great. You can see that a lot of activities still there. So yeah, they released version 1 somewhere 4 months ago. Here. All right, so once you understand or once you already install, you have to wait. You have to make sure that when you install the PubSpec, the library in the PubSpec library, your debug console your debug console basically return 0. Okay, exit code 0 means that your library successfully imported into your project directory. But if it turn out other than 0, means that there's a problem with the library import and you need to solve that issue. You need to tackle that issue first and then before you can use. Because sometimes, if you refer to my book, this is due to the older version. Okay, the older version require this update. Okay, the one that I use here, and even the Kotlin version that I'm using here is quite old version. But the new version that I've tested, the version 1.1.1, this one does not require for me to update. So that's how I put it. No longer required in the latest plugin version, which is 1.1.1. So no need to update the build script, which is inside build.gradle file. Okay, so build.gradle file basically available through Android folder, and inside Android folder there's a file called build.gradle. So build.gradle contain configuration for Gradle. Gradle, this is basically the source control. You have Gradle, you have Maven, and another one I forgot. There are three main source control. The one that I'm familiar is Maven and Gradle. Okay, but the other one I forgot already. Okay, but usually I just use Maven. Okay, sorry, I just use Gradle. For Flutter, they use Gradle. Okay. For Android Studio, they use Maven for that. Got that. I think Maven. Oh, Java. Sorry, Java. Java, they use Maven, I believe, not Gradle. Okay. Just a source control. Okay, so then what you need once you successfully import your project, the library into your project, so you need to go back to your main, and you can import the library here. Okay, so this is basically import. So as you can see from the example, so you can see this one basically the library consists a lot of functions, other functions. Okay, so the one that we use is basically this one. So to import that, even the README, sometimes they put it into the README, but README they have changed that. But everything you need to follow the installation. This is the installation, so you can see there. Import it now. Your Dart code can use it. However, if you already run your project and then the application is running, and then you import another library into the project, you need to stop your project and reinstall the project because the library is not there yet in the what we call in the snapshot of the current application that or the debug application that's currently running. So you need to stop your application and do the reinstallation. Most of the time, I believe 90% of the time will require that, because certain library, when they import into the project, basically they import all the source code, the new source code that is not yet compiled. So when the new source code is not yet compiled, you need to recompile again so that the latest application snapshot will be available in the application. And that will take some time. So be very careful depending on your the library sizes. Sometimes it might need quite a while to be able to do that, and you need to make sure that you're connected to internet. Okay, don't import anything new without connecting to internet, because everything comes through the pubdev. Whatever requirement that is required for the plugin will be downloaded. So if you don't have internet connection, that won't work. Okay, so make sure of that. All right, so once you have that, you need the audio file to be able to play. So the audio file, usually put it still anything related to the application asset. I put it inside the asset folder. So I've created a folder called sound. And here I use wave file. MP3 not so much. I'm not quite sure if the license, because there's a quarrel against MP3 file because of the license. So the owner of the library fighting in the court, and then MP3 having issues with that. So it is much safer to use Wave, because Wave is basically open and you can use Wave free with no much an issue. All right, so where you can download Wave file, like for example, there are two files here. So let us see the file. So the file basically available, this one .wave, either you can create the file on your own, or this is basically like the same with image. So you might need to find somewhere. So like here I have two files, fail and okay. And usually you can use something like Sound Bible that can allow you to download free sound clip. Okay, so again, remember, whenever you import sound into your project, the size of the sound file is usually larger than image. Anything longer than like 5 seconds can create like more than 500 kilobyte already. So that basically consider high. Okay, so do be very careful when you are dealing with audio file. And much more worse if you are using video. Okay, so I highly not recommend if you want to import video into your project. So be very careful on that. So Sound Bible here allow you to download, but I'm not quite sure, because yesterday, when I tried to download, it does seem some issue, but I think maybe because of the internet. Let me try to download again. Okay, let's say service bell. Okay, so this is the sound of the service bell. So if you want to download, you can just go to the service bell, and then there's a two type of file here. Even though you can see there's already like 0.2 meg size. So this is big. Okay, so if you want to download these, click on the wave, and then, so this is basically how they are making money through advertisement. Okay, so you have to wait for a while if the download started. But yesterday, I'm unable to download that issues because of the security. Not quite sure why. Maybe I'm connected to Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi guess. I cannot download. Usually I can just click on this, and then the second time I should be able to download that inside my download folder. Nope. I tried to download, but it doesn't allow me to download. There, managed to do that. Finally. Okay, let's try that. Let's see if we manage to get the sound to play. Yeah, this one. All right, cool. So let me take this file. So this is a 271 kilobyte. Okay, and put it into the project directory. So the project directory again, so I need to access the sound folder. Put it into sound folder and put it here. Change the name, Bell. But always check your the file ownership and license here. You can see there's a license. So this is attribution 3.0. So you need to look at the license allow you to do what. All right, so the attribution, it should be linked to the what is attribution 3.0. So attribution 3.0 is this. So you need to read the license first and what basically you can do with the file. Okay, so this is attribution 3.0 unported. So you are free to copy and redistribute the material in any medium or format. You can remix, you can change the file. So build upon the material for any purpose, even commercially. So it means that you can use this for free. If you're developing application, even for business, you can use the file. Okay. Sometimes people, they provide you this with the file, but there's a license. If you want to use for commercial, you have to pay for the license. You need to contact them and pay them that. You have to honor that. Okay, you have to honor that. They will provide you with the full file or the license file. Read that. Okay, very important if you don't want to get sued by people. Okay, so always look into that material. All right, so once you have that ready, so now I have the bell file. We have already import into the project. To be able to use that, just a very simple instruction. And now and this new library, the updated library, just one liner only. Okay, the one that I used before will take like 2 lines of code, but this one just 1 line of code should work already. So now you can see this button, this method here, load OK. So load OK basically call through this elevated button. Okay, so there's another button down here just for me to play around. So this one basically call load OK. So the load OK will sound fail. Okay, this is fail.wave. Fail.wave, if you play this, so that's basically the sound. Okay, so it means that your application now can play sound. That's an important, sometimes the requirement is that for those who are like partially blind, partially they're having problems with visions, audio cue sometimes can help them to navigate your application. Okay, so like when they click something, they hear A, C, D, A, B. So it means that basically help them in one way or another. Okay, so some of the application that requires that, so that others also can use. Less fortunate people who are having problems with their disabilities, they can still use the application through the audio cues, through the tactile cues. There are so many technology that you can use to help people to navigate. Okay, so sometimes you're like, right, this is just a very simple sound. But when you think about it, okay, this sound actually can help others to use your application. Okay, so think about that. So if you want to change to a different, I hope bell can be used. This is bell. So you can see the sound is quite small here. I'm not sure because maybe I can increase this here. Is it? There, I can increase the sound for this. There you go. Right? So yeah. By the way of this, just only changing this and your application should be able to get asset file from your application root directory, asset directory. Okay, we have bell, fail, okay. But again, remember that the amount of file that you use, this one, like already 1.2 megabyte. So that basically add up to your total application size. This is application assets. Whenever you install, it will install this together with the application into the user's phone device. So be very careful. Okay. Only use for certain important application that really need that function, or else don't use it. For fun, if you're building game, then okay, because usually when you have games, your game size can be rather large. Okay, so that's why your game, when you install like hundreds and hundreds of megabyte, that because of the requirement of the resources available required by the application for the games. All the asset will be required by the games to be able to function. Okay, but for normal application, not that much. Anything that require like crude database operation, not that much. Okay, so really careful in terms of that decision to include that into your project. Okay, I forgot one thing. There's another requirement needed to be able to use the library. So once you have the library imported into your class, you need to create an object for the library. So in this case, audio player object. So the object name here is player. Okay, so when we create player object, before this I use audio cache or audio player because this is the older library, the 0.3 version. They use this method. But the new library, they just initiate the object, final player object with audio player, so which is the class itself. And then for the player object, you can just use within the class. So you need to use await and asynchronous because whenever you are dealing with files, internet connections, which is unguaranteed when the file or the connection completed. So the file itself, like longer file, shorter file, there's no guarantee. So you need what we call as asynchronous method to be able to run the object and then wait. Okay, so that's why this is defined as asynchronous and wait for this to complete. Okay, so this is basically a wait before it can move on to the next instruction. So we put everything inside asynchronous method and await for the object with method play to play its asset source with the following assets that comes from here. Okay, this is the directory. The only difference that I noticed for image, you need to provide full directory to the image asset slash images slash calculator.png. But for audio, you just give sounds that bells here and your pub spec YAML. And also forgot about this. Your pub spec YAML also you need to update for sound because this is assets. Okay, so you need to update this also. Save, make sure that return code 0, and then you can move on with the rest of the code. But this is actually just a very simple code to work with. Okay, super simple code. Nothing much to the code itself. Okay, so now we are done with the basic import. Next, we're going to move on to the second important library in any Flutter project that deals with API or deals with database, okay, which is called HTTP library. So HTTP library allow for your Flutter application to communicate with the database through the use of API. And API here is basically application programming interface. Okay, if you're not familiar with API, API is an application programming interface that allow for your application to communicate with database. Okay, so I don't have the so you have your application and you have your database. But the problem is that you cannot communicate directly with the database. Okay, there's no way for you to be able to do that. I think there's ada kat sini saya letak gambar aja. I don't have the pictures here. Okay. The application. Okay. So, awak nak bagi saya ke? Meh. Saya tunjuk. Dia tak padam. Tak apa dah meh, pinjam satu. Ini dah. Baik buat nah. Okay, so when we talk about API, you have to understand this, okay, because you're going to use this a lot in your application later on. So you have your mobile phone here, your application here, connected to the internet, okay, connected to the internet through your 4G network, okay, or through your Wi-Fi. So your application here, when, for example, like you list data, okay, you list your product item, okay, when you buy Shopee, you have your product items listing inside this. But the product item here, basically need to come from somewhere. It's not available inside your phone. Okay, they need to come from a database. Okay, a database somewhere over the internet here. But the database here, it can be like MySQL, it can be Oracle, it can be a non-relational database. For example, you can use like MongoDB, you can use Firebase, you can use AWS. There's so many databases available here that depend on the application that you use here. But application cannot directly communicate with the database due to the security issue. Okay, there's no, even though there's a socket that allow you to do that, but when we talk about socket can be very expensive to use, very expensive to run. Okay, you can directly socket it to your database, but that will allow for a direct communication with database. But socketed application expensive. Your server will require to maintain that connection, direct connection all the time. That can be very bad for performance. Usually what we have, okay, so usually we have what we call another server here. This server basically provide what we call as an API, the application programming interface, that talk to the database. Okay, so the application programming interface here can be PHP, can be Python, can be Node.js. Nowadays, it's quite popular with the Node.js, which is based on JavaScript, based on the Java technology, and people now move to Node.js because of the performance. Okay, so they use Node.js. Python also okay. So far, I think I've tested Python before. Okay, but the problem is that Node.js, Python, or any other technology, most of the web hosting, they don't yet supported them. Okay, so when it's times for you to implement the project, so you might need to look for a server who can support all this. Okay, because most of the server out there, if you're running on a shared hosting, okay, so usually by default they will give you PHP by default. Okay, you can run PHP application. You can run MySQL database because that one comes 99.999%. Whenever you subscribe to any web hosting, they will give you this automatically through their cPanel, through their control panel by default. So that's why, even though PHP can be called like a dinosaur programming language, it's very, very old. It's since starting 97 already here. Okay, up until now, it's quite matured programming, scripting for back-end processing. Okay, so that's why up until now, even though there are so many options available, PHP is still here to stay, still here to be able to serve people. Even 70% to 80% of the current web server application still running on PHP. Okay, there are people in the developer community, they keep bashing one another. They say like PHP is dead, PHP is dead, PHP is no longer being used by people. But the statistics still show 70 to 80% of web server applications still running on PHP. Still running on PHP. There's also another option if you want to go for Microsoft, you can use ASP.NET or ASP Active Server Page. But Active Server Page, you require Microsoft server. which is also quite rare when it came to finally publish your application. Okay, and quite expensive also, because ESP server that support ESP require license. Apache, no. This is also another open source application. So that's why I keep on supporting open source, because open source keep pushing the technology forward. People in open source community, these people, they are very bright people, very smart people, intelligent people. They work to push the technology further, make it faster, make it grow even faster. Compared to a closed source system, people who are in Microsoft, who are in Apple, because they are very cocoon to your product, to their product. So they protect their product through a lot of IP, through a lot of hassle, so that others cannot touch their code. But open source, go. As long as you return back to the community, expand the project. Okay, so that is how community works. So you have this API. So this API talk to the database, and then the database return back to the API, because both server, the database server and also for the backend server, usually they are basically within the same network, which is local host network. This is local host network, means that closed system, and they are secured within that local network. They are cocooned into that. So application through the internet talk to the API, API talk to the database, database return back to the API, API return back to the application. So that's how it works and how things work so far. Yeah, and still working. So this is what we need now. To be able to talk to that, we need HTTP. And to be able to do this. Compared to HTML, PHP programming, you don't have to do this. But for mobile application, this is a native application. For any native application, a library will be required to be able to perform that HTTP request. Okay, so to request to the PHP and get back the result. And the result usually written as a JSON data format. Okay, usually written as a JSON data format. So that's how it should work. All right. So this is what I want to tell to you, how it should work, and later on your application also will work based on that architecture. So this weather application basically also the same. Okay, so just a very simple application to load data. So this is the design that I use, a very simple weather design. You have text field, and this is drop down button. Okay, there's a usual drop down button, and there's a button here, and there's a text down here just to indicate the current weather for the selected cities. So if you want to build the application, let me just use the example that I already have. But that one's already completed, and you can see the application through my GitHub channel. The application is here, Flutter app, hello world weather app, this one. So this application here, but this one already built, and you can load like Alustar, load weather. So you can get location, Alustar, the current weather is cloudy, the temperature at the moment is 25 degrees Celsius, humidity 87, and it feels like 26.2 degrees Celsius currently in Alustar. Okay, so this is basically the expansion that I've introduced, or the update that I introduced. So there's also codes down there that basically do that. But I'm going to create new project for this just to demonstrate the whole process of HTTP library. Reason being is that HTTP library is very, 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 very important. Okay, I cannot stress this enough. Very important to understand how it works and how it be able to send for requests either through get array or through post array, and then how the data is being received by the backend server, PHP, because you're going to learn about PHP also, how it receives the data and how it processes the data, how it requires the query to the database through SQL statement, and then return back and reformat the data into JSON data format. We call it encoding that into JSON data format, and then received by the application as a JSON data format, and your application need to decode the JSON data format into list array. Okay, and then your application can resort into display the data to user. Okay, so that basically the process that you really need to understand. So now I'm going to start with creating new project. So let's say command palette here, new project, application, where to put the application. So let's say like here, I want to create inside here. I haven't yet uploaded to my GitHub. So where the app v2, right? So this is version 2. So the weather app v2, wait for the application to ready. So again, the internet still there. This one I use template. Did I use template or not? Oh no. Okay, I think it's okay. Should be okay. Okay, so you can delete all this. Actually, there's a script to be able to delete all the comment. In this comment, actually, there's no need for us. I can safely delete this. No need for this. No need for this. Sorry, I deleted something. I think I deleted something here. The counter. Delete this one. Delete this. Set state. Even the method here can be removed. This one also no need. Oops. Deleted the build method. On delete to delete that. I'm not quite sure if there's any options allow us to auto delete all the comment, because it's quite annoying to have a lot of comment inside your application. But it's good for managing document later on. Say constant widget inside here can be removed. Floating action button also can be removed. This is trailing also can be removed, and then control that. All right, so Flutter weather v2, weather app. This is just title. So you have v2, and yeah, that's it. Okay, so we start with the basic UI. So just to cut things short, I'm going to compile this. Oh, before that, you need to import this very important library. So before we building all the UI, so I'm going to import this one library called HTTP library, just to make sure that the library pre-compiled before we can just use it. So there's a library called HTTP, which basically available through the package HTTP here. So this is now version 0.13. So there's not much update to the library since then. They just updated this 3 months ago, but they haven't yet entered version 1. But the popularity is very, very popular. Okay, so, and this is also available on most platforms. Should be no problem for you to use. And this is already implement now safety for Flutter version 2 and above, 2.3 and above. Okay, so now I think we can use it with no problem. So get the HTTP, install into your, you can either use the pubspec assist like this. It will automatically do that for you. Okay, so if I enter this, and then you should be able to see down there, the pubget is running or executing its command to get the weather, to get the HTTP. So now you get exit code 0. if you look inside your pub spec YAML now, you should be able to see HTTP, the latest version of HTTP, automatically added here. Or you can install that on your, or you can add that on your own. You just go to the installing, and then should be able to just either you can give the command, this command, or with this command with Flutter, and then, or you can just copy this line and put it under dependency, all the same. Okay, should be no problem. But be very aware of the tab. You can see there's a tab there, line there. This is tab, so it should be right underneath this Flutter, the same line with Flutter, not something like this. Okay, pub spec YAML, very fussy in terms of tablet. Okay, so it needed to be under Flutter, the same line with Flutter dependencies. Okay, so if any changes, you can see there's a dot up there, means that you make changes. So save again. So save again, we'll try to check, the pubget will check and should return 0 if there's nothing wrong with your pub spec file, exit code 0. So close that, should be no problem now. Now you should be able to use the library into your project. So I'm going to compile first the library, because this will take some time to be able to run the compilation, the build folder. Okay, so wait for the application to compile first, and then we start with the library and whatnot. Okay, so get it to run, make it, allow the build folder to be ready there. There's build folder already. Okay, run the project and wait, and let's see the codes. Okay, we go back to the UI here, the weather API. All right, so the UI here will require a drop-down button, list, and whatnot. So I'm going to put everything inside the children folder. Children's columns widget. And we're going to have this a very simple UI first, so that this will demonstrate how to perform HTTP requests. For this HTTP request, what we're going to request is basically weather information. Okay, so this is also another business in software development, is to create your own API. There's so many API available out there, and you as a developer, if you want to develop application like say for business analysis, looking at a stock market, you can have stock market API, which is available. You want to check crypto value, you can check for the Forex, you can check for weather. There are so many API. Okay, the way that API work is that you can register the API. Sometimes they provide you for free. Let's say for 1,000 call, you can use it for free, which allow you to develop. Okay, daily 1,000 call, which means that every time you call that API link, counted as one. Every time you call again, counted as another one. So if you reach 1,000, you cannot access anymore unless you pay for another block. Okay, so that's how API works. Even Google Map also basically the same. So if your application basically implementing Google Map, every time you scroll up, you scroll down, there's a one call. So if you're developing application that basically use the Google Map API, be very careful of that. Okay, because I have friends, one of the application here, I'm as a consultant, because they have problems with their Google Map. They haven't, is it Loncat? Not Loncat. There's another one developed. Loncat also local. Forgot the other one. Not Tapao. A Grab is too big already. That one is giant. Even they also having problem with that. There's one. I think either Loncat or the other one that I forgot the names. Toot toot, yeah, toot toot. Yeah, toot toot. They call it toot toot. Okay, they're having problem with this because they forgot about the API call. They're unable to make any money at all. Okay, the same with other delivery service. Reason being is that whenever that's why nowadays they limit the number of maps. You cannot choose on the map itself. The map can be very expensive to use. You can display the map, but you cannot just move around within the map because every move that is one API call. So Google will provide you like 100,000 calls for free, like for example, but small application should be no problem. But once your application being accessed by literally thousands and thousands of users, so for every move, you have to pay that. Okay, the company will require to pay, and they are losing money actually. So that's why when you're complaining that why is getting expensive because of that service, or else you need to build your own map service, which is impossible nowadays. So map service can comes from either from Google Map, from the Open Map, from the nowadays even Apple come out with their map, a number of map service, but that basically how they make money. They give you some amount for free, but then they charge you once you completed your free package. Okay, so do understand that business is very good for Google because they have that service. They do support small developer. They give it for free. 100,000 calls should get you through for a month if you are just a small developer. And your user base is rather small. But once your user base start to grow, then you start to have to pay. So that's why they start charging money here and there so that they can make that into a profitable venture. Or else, like they're saying, if you want to make business, you want to make money. So you don't complain about this. You don't complain that why business charging a small, because they are making money. They want to make money. That's their sole purpose on this world, to make money. Maybe they have people to pay. They have infrastructure to pay. They have a lot of things to pay. So that's why they need to charge people. Okay. So yeah, is it done already? Yeah, done. So this time around seems to be a little bit faster. So now the library is already there. So I'm going to quickly build the UI. So the UI here start with, I'm just going to take the codes example that I already provided. So we start here with, is it already state? Okay, this one's already stateful. So I can edit everything inside here. Should be no problem. So I'm going to add everything that I require. The first thing that I need is a text field. Text. Just take that. Put it into your widget. Bam. Okay, now we have simple weather. You can see there. Next widget. So this widget will require what we call as drop-down button. So we'll require two objects. One is a string, one is a list. Okay, so I hope you still remember your programming too about list array. So this is a simple variable, and then this is a list array string. So you provide this with a 3 value, and the object name is log list. Okay, take that, put it into your state widget. So the state class is here, put it there. So now we have this. And then we need the drop down button widget. So the drop down button widget is a little bit longer because of its requirement. It needed a few parameters such as value, on change, what do you want to do when user click on the drop down. So we just want to get the new value to be assigned. And then we need to list the items inside the drop down box. So we use the log list array dot map, and then based on that we'll tabulate or we'll fill in the drop down button. So this is through items parameter. So just like that, I'm going to take this and then put it as another widgets into the list down here. Okay, so that's another widget. Make it a nice arrangement. This is a constant. Oops, sorry, not constant. That is what? Oh yeah, this is another new update. So this is just to move the property to an argument. It's just moving that down there. Okay, so it's not that much. So all right, good. We have 2 now, and then we should be able to see these already. Okay, so what else do we need? Once we have that, we need a button. So you can see that down there, there's an elevated button down there. And also the text for the description. So we have 2 more widgets that we add into our widget list. Where to add? Down here. So another widget, put it there. So we don't have description. So for the description, we can just have another variable description, but this is just an empty value just to solve that problem. And this is a constant, so let's see add constant modifier for now because this is defined as null. Save. Right, so there you go. So now we have 4 widgets actually. There's a widget down there, or maybe we can just by default no data by default. Okay, so you should be able to see. Let me refresh on that. Should be no data this as a description down here. Or reload the page. Should be down here. What happened to the description? Font web bold, text description. The description should be there, but not quite sure why I don't see that description over there. But apart from that, let's just move on. Let's see now how to load data. Okay, so now we have a button. We have a null. This button here will be required to call something. So the weather API, basically free API, but only for 1,000 call, I believe. Okay, I think so. So the API basically accessible. If you go to the open API, you can register for free. So this is an open API, open weather map. I'm recording, right? Okay, good. So this is now they have come out with version 3 already. Okay, so you can register this for free. You can see that for business, if you want to use for business, there's a pricing there. Okay, 1 call by call subscription plan. So you can see 1,000 call API per day for free, and then block daily limit per API call. You can see the pricing here down here. The price is this is Great Britain company, so £30 for startup, which allow you to have 10 million call. So enterprise version much more expensive, 1,500 pound per month. But for you guys, 1 mil per month, you can implement 1 million call, should be more than enough. 1 million call. Okay, so for the developer, just to try around, 1 million calls should be enough. But limited to only real-time 60 calls per minute. So not more than that, means that every minute you can only call the API 60 times. You cannot exceed more than that for every minute. So that if you are developing what we call as a real-time system, for those who are learning subject real-time, okay, so the definition of real-time can falls here, like 600 call per minute. 1 minute, how many seconds? The what? 60. So means that every second 1 call. So it should be okay for real-time. But if you want to have like much higher resolution, so then you need to subscribe. So this is their business plan. This is just normal, okay? Business plan. And even the data that you can get, like for weather data, 3 hour, 5 days, hourly, daily forecast. So those basically available only for those who paid better. Okay, so subscription base. So you, for free one, you can get like 3 hours data, previous 3 hours should be available for you. You can only get basic weather map. You can get weather dashboard, a pollution API, geocoding. Also, they got geocoding API. This is nice. So the geocoding API basically allow you to get address of certain location by providing latitude and longitude. Okay, like for example, you provide latitude and longitude here, they will return pusat asasi AUM. So that's why they have that features also here. The geocoding one. Usually I just use the Google version, but they did have this also, means that we can use Google geocoding API by using their Open Weather Service API. I hope that makes sense to you. So once we have that, now we can implement, you need to log in. Like mine, I already have my account, so I can just straight away go to my API key. So retrieve my API. So the application programming key is, this is mine. So for you can be different. This is my key. Okay, so you can use yours. So once you have your key, then you can implement the call. So the call that I have here, I think I already have that somewhere that I put. Is it here? Nope, it's not here. Is it this one? Nope, not this one. It's basically available inside my book. This one. So this is the key. This is the API call. So notepad, I'm going to put here, put it there, and get all the keys here. So the key, the URL is get array. It uses get array, so you need to provide all this information. There are 3 information required. The first, the most important one is the, where's my key? I removed that already. It's supposed to be key there. Oh, there. Yeah, this is location name metric. It's supposed to be key. Oh, I think I've deleted that already yesterday. Should be key somewhere here. I deleted that. I missed on that, I think. You need key. Let me check again the not sure why I've deleted that. I think I've deleted the key already. Open weather map. Okay, let me go back and get the full URL for the key. Because that key basically will allow you to be able to do that call. My key. This is key. Okay, done. The API that I can use, billing service, current weather, view. This is version 3. For version 3, let's see if I can get the API key done. One call API, how to buy, what is the documentation, free data for student. For student, you should be able, nowadays they introduce with this. Okay, you can, for student, you can get like, but I think more than enough already, the one that they give for free also. But what is the documentation? API, this is the API. Sign up, one call API, professional collection, API documentation. Oh, they forced me to use the one that I use is version 2.5, but should be no problem. We can use the latest version. The API key, basically you need to look this one. This is the API key. But I don't want latitude and longitude information. I want location name. One call latitude longitude. Nope, I don't want latitude longitude information. I want location. Location information. You should be able to read this historical data. There's the API key, app ID there. Maybe I can just take this app ID and put the key there. Here's my key over there. Okay, so I just want to fill in the key, and this is the API key for my application, for my API, and take the key, app ID, put it, I think before or after. I think before should be no problem, or before or after, because this is just a get array. So, and there. Let me try to call this, but this one is version 2.5, the older version. Okay. So, but the older version also still can works. Should be because I've tested that yesterday. Let me try that. Invalid key, not the app key. API, open weather map. I think this app ID, Jitra, this one. Yeah, this one. So I might need to update that one more time, put that back into my code. Okay, put that into my code here so that I don't get lost later on. So you can see there whether Q, let's say this is Jitra, and app ID, or you call it app ID. And you need equal metric because I want the data to be written as a metric, okay, not as US formatted data. Okay, so I want the data for Jitra. I want, this is my app ID so that only me can access that information. And the unit that I want is metric. So this is a normal get array. So you need to be familiarized with get array. There are two types, get and post. Okay, post basically more secured, only for large data and only for secured data, only for database modification. But for retrieving data, usually we just use get array. Okay, so once you get array, you should be able to be written as the following data. So what is this data? This is data for Jitra, and this is all the data that is being written back by the database, by the API. And this data basically provide you with all the required information for you to be able to use. But usually it written data as a JSON data format. Okay, so JSON data format. So JSON data format is a special data format that usually being used for database operation or API operation. Okay, so it always written as this format. Previously, we used XML, or even sometimes the older version they use even CSV, the CSV version of data format. But nowadays, most I believe 99% most of the data always return their data as a JSON data. So the way that JSON data, if you look at JSON data, or what is JSON data? JSON is for JavaScript object notation. I'm not quite sure the correct naming for JSON. JSON, sometimes they call it JSON, sometimes they call it JSON, depending on your accent. Okay, so this is basically a data exchange format. Okay, so if you learn this more through W3 School, it's a JSON, is a text format for storing and transporting data. And it's basically self-describing data that allow for you to read the data in key value pair. You have key to the left, you have the data to the right. Key value, key value. And the data is usually being arranged in object and array format. And this is just a text file. Widely used in non-relational database. Okay, if you're familiar with Firebase, or if you're familiar with MongoDB, if you're familiar with AWS, if you're familiar with non-relational database type, they will definitely use JSON to store data into their database because there's no relationship in database. Everything stored as a flat data structure. So if you remember your JavaScript, your Java programming too, I believe you learn about reading data from file, right? You remember that? I believe the last part of the topics basically talk about file read, reading data, writing data, file write. So that basically what we call as a flat data. But here a formatted flat data. Okay, a formatted flat data. So what we have is this type. So it can be you can create a much complex data, but this is as simple as it can be. As you can see here, the way that the data is being presented. Now that you have one object here, this one object basically described for one person. Name John, age 30, car Nal. So the key to the left, the data to the right. The data can be string or can be number. They don't care. JSON data format, there's no data type actually, because it is a non-relational, non-formatted, it's not non-formatted, it's we call it, I forgot the terms, the term for it, I forgot the term already. Just don't care about the format at all. Okay, no string, no double, no boolean, no nothing. Everything treated as just a text, formatted as this. Okay. Okay, so you can learn more about this, and it is being widely used nowadays and very, 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 very important for you to learn and to master. Okay, out there later on, you're going to deal with a lot of JSON data. You need to be able to read JSON data, to be able to create JSON data, to be able to decode and encode JSON data. Okay, very, very important data format, JSON format. Okay, so learn about this. There's even specific data format. You can see down there, specific topic that talk about JSON. Before this, we use this one, XML. But XML no longer being used already. Quite sure if it is because of that. Okay, so you can learn more about JSON data format. So I'm not going to talk this in details, except of using it. Okay, so once you have that, so you can see now this is the data, even though it looked like a gibberish data. What is this? So, but if you wanted to make it look better, you can always use an online tool called JSON Editor Online. Okay, so these tools allow you to see the data much better. Like this one is for yesterday, so this is for today. So if you paste to the left as a text, if you parse to the right, you can see that the data is being formatted as this. This is a tree structure. So you can see the tree structure like this. The data is being laid out like this. Okay, so you have all the object here. Okay, so anything that within the curly bracket they call object. So you can have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 object here. So inside object, it basically can contain another piece of data. So for coordinate, it can contain these two data. For weather, it contain array. Anything within bracket is called array. So array object. So here it is only contain one array object, which contain all these four data that describe about weather, cloud, few cloud, and icon that use for the weather, and the base that use a station. For main data down here, it basically provide temperature data, feels like data, temp min, temp max, pressure data, humidity data. So this is where you want to retrieve the data and display, extract the data and display in your application. And the rest, wind, cloud data, time. Okay, this is time data. So you can convert this value into date time and the rest, right? So location. So those are basically the much easier way to read JSON data. And the best thing about JSON data also, you can use the JSON data and convert that into Dart class. Okay, Dart class. There's a Dart class converter later on that can take the JSON data and quickly convert that into Dart class. And then you can use that class object into your application to create list object. Okay, and then you can manipulate this object to display back data into UI. So now you start to see the complexity of the application to be able to retrieve data here and there and manipulate the data and perform all the crude operations for the database. All right, moving on. Any questions for this? Nope. Okay, now we want to load the data. We already have HTML. How do we load those data? So the data, this one already talked about that here. So the HTTP library. So to be able to use HTTP, usually there are multiple methods of doing this, but the one that I use a lot is this. Create directly object for the HTTP. Import the HTTP package as an HTTP object. Okay, so as HTTP, so all the classes in the HTTP dot now can be directly called as HTTP object. You can give it any names as you like, but I just call it HTTP. So you have that underscore blue. This one means that you haven't yet used this object. Okay. So now I'm going to create a method down here. Get weather, for example. So now just create that method down there. Create method get weather, which is down here. So what we need to do now is to call this. Okay, so now this is basically what we have here. So there are two variables up here. This is just for the var means that undefined variable. So once you assign, the variable will be defined. So take that, put it into my methods functions down there. So this one error because we need to go that up there. So we have API ID. So you need to use your API ID, and this is my API ID. Yours should be yours. Okay, so punch your ID here, your secret code here. So this is basically just to build your get weather get URL. So we have select location that we put it up here. This one, why is it error? Because of the constant. And the constant should be over there. And then, so we have select log. Select log by default is Changlun. Should be no problem if you want to set that as default. So now we have select log and then API ID, and then we pass this all. And my assumption here that you're already familiar with get array. Ada yang tak faham get array tak? You have no idea about get array. This is get array. How do we know about get array? You can see there's a this, and then you have this value here that's being passed, and then you have this is just a value that we get from that from a variable, and you have this n here to separate between multiple data. Okay, that is get array. The unsecured way of transmitting through the internet. Okay, so once we have that, we need to get the response back from the server. So next step is to await. So the response here is the return data that we get from the HTTP GET, but we need to await for the HTTP that we already defined up there to get by using the URL that we pass here. So since this is an await method, we need to add async to our methods. Okay. So now the response will wait for the get array to return anything which is supposed to be this data. Okay, this data here. This data is basically the return data, part of it. Okay, and usually it will return a lot more, like the connection status or the HTTP status, and there's a lot of other return, but this is basically what it does. So response here will get dumped with whatever that the request comes from here. Okay, it will be dumped. So if you wanted to try, you can get the value already. The first data, or maybe I can just dump everything and print out. For now, it should already works. So I just want to print out response. Okay, so let's say I want to print out everything that is, but this one is an object, I believe. So you should be seeing something down here if I click this button here. So let's say this button here, load weather. Be under debug down here. There you go. Instance of response. So instance of response means that the response now is an object of this return. If you want to read something from the response, you can always get those. You can have headers, is redirect, status code, and we have headers. Headers is basically all the data, I believe, that that retrieve. So for now, let's see the status code. Okay, so status code, HTTP status code, there's a lot. You have 200 for OK. You have 404 not found. You have 500 invalid resource. 505, if I'm not mistaken, you can look around at status code. So like if I print out the status code for this, if I requested, you can see 200. So 200 status code for HTTP means that success. Okay, so the data is already there, but we haven't yet done anything with the data. Not yet. So if you want to get anything with the data, if there's a body, there's a body, I forgot the response.body. Okay, so response.body. So let's try to print out body. Save. Let's see what it returned. It should return this. Now you can see now the data there. So this is the data that we want to manipulate. This is the JSON data that is being returned by the API. And this is the one that we need to retrieve. But it is not just easy to get the data. We need to be able to decode the JSON data into the data that we can easily manipulate. Okay, so once we have the data, now you can see from here. So the reason that I put if race code equal to 100 means that if the response is okay, then I process the data. But if the response is not okay, then I don't want to process the data because there's no data to process. So there's no point of having to continue the operation. So that's why you can see if, okay, let me just delete this first. If the I forgot to be status code. I want status code and then assign this, or you can directly check the status code here. Equal. This one I use a variable, undefined variable, to set the status code. Okay, get the status code. And then we use the if statement to check if the status code equal to 100, means that we have the data. Okay, so this one we have the data, res code equal to 100 is good. If equal to 404, maybe you want to respond something, means that something going on, so that you don't have to wait forever. So once the data res code is 200, then you can start to dump the data into JSON data first. Okay, we dump the data into JSON data first, all the body of the data that we retrieve from here. So that is the first step. The second step is to parse the data by using what we call as JSON decode. All right, so the JSON decode here, okay, this here at first going to get error because you need to import a specific library for it, which is .convert. Okay, you need to import .convert first, and then you should be able to decode your JSON data that you retrieve from here, that you have your dump there, and then now it is ready to be used by your application. So your application here now can get all the data. For example, we wanted to get temperature, humidity, weather, and finally build the description down here. So if I use the set state, like inside here, just use everything dump inside the set state. Okay, you can put either before, after, or inside the set state. We want to update the UI. Okay, so the UI, basically the first data that we want is temperature. So the temperature should be defined up there, or you can just define inside there, should be no problem. If there's only local into your application, should be no problem. So we have three data that we wanted from the parse JSON. Okay, easy, just type var, because all this as undefined, just use var, and the last one also var. All right, so now we have three data. The way that we retrieve the data is through array, because we already decode the JSON data into array object. So the array can be retrieved by two-dimensional array. So this is why it is very important for you. Before this, you learn about multi-dimensional array. So this is two-dimensional array. So the two-dimensional array now pointed to be able to retrieve data temperature, you need to go to the main array. And inside the main array, there's a temp array that you need to retrieve, because the temp array basically the one who hold the temperature data. For the humidity, also the same. From the parse JSON array, there's a main sub array, and then there's a sub array there, humidity. For the weather data, it's not available in the main array. It's only available under weather array, which is the first array under main array. So this is three-dimensional data already. Okay, three-dimensional data. So once you have that data and assign this to each of the variable here, now you can use the variable and build whatever string concatenation that you want. So in this case, this is the description is basically the one that I want to update, so that so I dump it over there. Need to take this up there. Okay, so description, the current weather in $select log is $weather. The current temperature is $temp Celsius, and humidity is $hum%. So this is concatenation of all the variable that I have up here into down here. Okay, so now since we already set state, which means that the description that we have down in here will be refreshed. Okay, so once you refresh that, you should be able to see data. So you might want also to, the one that I added here, if other than 200, then I just say that the description is no data, just that, just simple as that. Okay, so that depends on how you want to implement that, but this is basically how I just simply use else, no record. Okay, just that. So now let's see that again. So if I click on this load weather data, you should be able to see the information down there. So the current weather in Kowloon is cloud. The current temperature is this, and humidity is 85%. So if select different location, select log is now changed to GTRA. Load weather, the current weather in GTRA is cloud. The current humidity temperature is all there. You select for Alustar, load weather, you get a different information. So that basically now your application is basically use API, retrieve the data, process the data, display back the data to user. So that's basically the process. Okay, are we clear? All right.